Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Chris Boden. I'm the Senior Advisor at One Education's Education, Welfare and Safeguarding team. I'm here today with my colleague Jess. We're going to be discussing the sexual harassment in schools. I found that Everyone's Invited campaign shocking and was really pleased to see the Ofsted response. Their report came out in June earlier this year. Some of the findings in this were equally shocking. I couldn't believe that the scale of the problem in schools is bigger than most adults had anticipated. And particularly girls felt that sexual harassment was so commonplace that they no longer reported it. Some teachers and governors thought claims of peer-on-peer abuse was just part of growing up. Jess, do you think that's a fair analysis of what schools see as peer-on-peer abuse?
I think, in all fairness, I think a lot of where it says there about some teachers and governors, I think there's an element of staff maybe feeling that there's banter, boys being boys, girls being girls, maybe a lack of a bit of immaturity going on. But I think the main thing for me, the main theme with a lot of school staff is that they don't want to see their pupils as perpetrators of abuse. So when we're talking about sexual harassment, we're talking about peer-on-peer abuse and the fact that in a lot of cases it could be classed as a criminal offence. I think members of staff are worried about maybe labelling their pupils with the fact that they are a perpetrator of abuse and could be committing a criminal offence. So I think that's probably a fair analysis and probably part of the reason why there's such a lack of reporting on the topic.
That's it. Some schools say they've had lots of incidents and they've reported it and they've got the files neatly, locked away in drawers or on CPOMs or whatever they use. And then you've got other schools that say, no, it doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
Are they saying that because they're just not acting on those reports, not taking them seriously?
And it's what it's reported under, isn't it? So is it an issue around friendship? Is it an issue, is it being recorded as a case of peer-on-peer abuse, or is it being recorded as something else? I think that is the key thing, Chris. I think you've hit the nail on the head that actually it's how things are reported and that lack of consistency. Maybe there's a bit of inconsistency with the way that staff perceive these situations and these issues. People might see it and have their own personal concerns that come into play with regards to how they report it. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to go on, and it needs to be that top-down approach. We're clear in saying that DSLs and senior leaders maybe have a bit more awareness, but it needs to be that age-old phrase, it's everyone's responsibility, and that needs to be shared throughout.
Absolutely. I mean, the report did recognise that it was senior teachers, and including the DSLs, that had a more accurate understanding of sexual harassment rather than the staff in general. But again, it comes back to schools are being asked to rise to that challenge again of ensuring that all things are in place to meet the statutory guidance.
Yeah. And the difficulty there is it comes at a cost, doesn't it? So whether it's time, whether it's your inset in September, it quite often it can be costly. It's taking up it's making sure that every single member of staff has that awareness. So it's, everybody's restricted, aren't they, in terms of how that message is shared, how that information is put across, and how quickly that is done. We have to remember, as you said there, Chris, about those senior teachers and DSLs, the likelihood is that they're not going to be the ones that recognise those behaviours. They're not going to be the members of staff that are receiving the disclosures. It's you front of house members of staff, isn't it, that are recognising what's going on with pupils, hearing the things in the corridors, hearing disclosures, and therefore it does need to be them that are aware of how to report it and how serious that kind of record needs to be taken. It's the DSLs that are reporting that on to children's services or whoever they need to.
And it's those members of staff that will bear the brunt of creating a culture where sexual harassment and the online sexual abuse is not tolerated. They've got to make sure there's high quality training for the teachers, the delivering of the RHSE curriculum, are the right people delivering that. Routine record keeping, it's not always as straightforward as it's made to sound. They've got to look at the behavioural approaches, as well as working with the local safeguarding partnerships. It's just a huge task, again, to add on to what they're already doing.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see the response now ready for September. We know that keeping children safe in education has been updated, ready for September the 1st. And there is a lot of content around peer-on-peer abuse in response to this Ofsted report. It will be, we know that schools are going to be on it in terms of their training and record keeping and everything that they need to do with the curriculum. But it will be interesting again to see how those safeguarding partners work, you know, in line with education, and how quickly information is shared and things like that. I think it's definitely something that's needed, but it will be different to see how consistent everybody is and how quickly everybody responds to it, I think.
Do you think that they're up for the task? Can they respond to this? What do they need?
I think it's all about working together. We say it time and time again, don't we? But I think the schools need to listen to what police, children's services, health are saying, and those other multi-agency partners need to listen to the schools. You know, it would be great to see that there's extra funding and things like that put in place, if at all possible, for schools to be able to access training and you know, support from other multi-agency partners. But I think only time will tell with that element of it.
The Education Secretary, it said they're going to give dedicated inset time to training. Do you think this will really happen? Knowing what we know about how difficult it is in schools for DSLs to find the time to do their role to the letter of what the statutory guidance is asking.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because we know full well that insets are planned years in advance. So I know now that schools will definitely be organised for September insets. Quite often they're already well versed on what they're going to roll out in all their insets across the academic year. So you know, it's great that time is you know, proposed in terms of being allocated, but I think it will be different across each setting on how that is rolled out and how it looks, how that training offer looks within each setting.
We want to help the schools, obviously. You know, we deliver a lot of DSL training across Greater Manchester and the Northwest. We speak to DSLs week in, week out. We think we know how we can support them. I know you and I have looked at these reports at the new Keeping Children Safe, and we'll be looking at putting a more detailed briefing out for that. But you know, what can schools do now? What can we offer to them?
I think it's all about planning. I think the senior leaders, designated safeguarding leads, governors need to have a clear action plan on what they are going to do. We know that at One Education, we're going to be doing a pre-recorded training webinar about this Ofsted report and the response to sexual harassment in schools and what schools need to do to kind of keep in line with the legislation on that. I think sharing things like that with your staff team is absolutely key, and making sure that they can access that in a timely manner, and just having that kind of signposting information of what they need to do when to report those situations. We know that, again, there's 7-minute briefings on different safeguarding topics, and this is a great opportunity to be able to have a 7-minute briefing on how to recognise the concerns, what to do with regards to reporting it, and then kind of further support for staff and pupils. Again, One Education's safeguarding education welfare team are going to have a 7-minute briefing created on this. But I definitely think that's something as a member of staff that I would be wanting to share with my staff.
And we know that they're a proven and an effective way of sharing information. I mean, it does what it says on the can. It's seven minutes, and you get a lot of information across. But you take that in, and it's bits to remember, and then you build on that.
Definitely.
Hopefully, in offering what we can offer through the webinar and the briefing, it'd be really good if we can get together a network of people that are working in this area, do a Q&A. We can do it online. You know, we've learned something from the last 18 months that online it suits people when they're busy in school.
And that'd be a great opportunity as well for people to already talk about what they've got in place, but maybe, you know, share a bit of good practice across different settings to find out what plans people have got with regards to rolling information out. We know that it needs to be well embedded in the curriculum. We know we need to be thinking about how we're going to share this information with parents. And I'm sure lots of schools and trusts across the country will have lots of great ideas on how to do that. So having that kind of Q&A session virtually would be a brilliant way of networking and sharing those ideas together. I think the other thing for me as well is with all of this, with training, there needs to be a bit of an impact evaluation on it as well, or some sort of questionnaire to make sure that everybody is on the same page with regards to their response. So thinking about you know, have you taken all that information in? Are you fully aware of your duties with regards to reporting these concerns? And then, you know, those questionnaires or those impact evaluations do highlight to senior leaders if somebody maybe does need to be revisited, you know, the topic needs to be revisited with somebody to make sure they are fully aware of what they need to do. Or maybe if they just feel uncomfortable about it, just having somebody that they can talk to say, okay, you're lacking a bit of confidence, this is what we're going to do to support you, and this is who you need to come to if you're unsure.
And hopefully that will help embed that whole school culture.
Definitely.
Because things have got to change, haven't they?
Yeah, has to be. I think the main thing for me is, you know, this is our turn now. We've seen it with lots of different organisations, haven't we? We've seen it in TV, we've seen it in football clubs with their response to sexual abuse and harassment. And it's definitely long overdue that education respond now. It's been evidenced in this Ofsted report. It's been evidenced in the Everyone's Invited campaign that it is still an ongoing matter. It's not something that we've nipped in the bud. And we have to learn, don't we? We have to learn, we have to adapt, we have to change and rise to the challenge of stamping this out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jess.